you're seeing in your screens is 1 week of intelligence delivered through VMRay UniqueSignal. And in there, of course, there are some visualizations a little bit cut in half, but what it says is that it's generally delivering around 500 analysis reports per day, which comes with around 500 indicators averagely. And with all this, to be able to tie the story to each other, to double down on that context claim that we have, we're distributing a lot of relationship objects to tie the indicators to each other so that once there is an indicator that is related to another indicator that was observed to be in the same analysis in the VMRay platform, you would be able to pivot around. Once you see one indicator match in your event sources, you can see, hey, what do I know about that indicator, or what other indicators are related to that attack, that campaign. And certainly we're trying to make this context more visible and more pivotable. And in there, we not only give these relationship objects to just tie random hashes or IP addresses to each other. Also, what we do is to attach that behavioral information that VMRay is expert on monitoring, and map that to MITRE ATT&CK corpus through MITRE ATT&CK IDs, and then just give you what is actually this indicator related to. And on the right side of your screen, you can see the top kill chains. That's, the more frequent the behavior is visible, the more it will be on the top, on the higher levels of this visualization. And in there, the highest one is the defense evasion. And this is actually is tying to the story of VMRay platform, where the evasion resistancy of it is actually playing a really important role in here, where if the threat analysis platform was not able to understand that it is being evaded by the malware, not only that behavior is going to be missed, that evasion behavior is going to be missed, but all the other later stages in that malware campaign is going to be missed as well, because at that point in time, if the malware is able to evade the threat analysis solution, then it's going to probably, in most of the scenarios, stop executing right there and then, and won't show any real behavior after that point. And this is certainly not the case. As you can see, we are seeing such a high occurrence of defense evasion in the malware samples that we analyze. And this is a really important factor to consider on how much later stages of visibility any threat intelligence vendor is able to give. And we not only give that level of enrichment into the indicator level, but we also know more than 60% of the time what malware family this indicator is classified with, right? So we are able to, analyze many different type of malware families. And in the last week alone, we've shipped around more than 70 different malware families. And in there, you can see there's, of course, some of them have a higher percentage in the entire share, but you will be able to understand, see the different occurrences of different malware families really being actively involved into active campaigns that are running in the threat landscape in the wild. Right? We can also give some scenarios what is the country that this particular indicator is targeting to, right? And we do this via these passive DNS enrichments, and in there we can understand how many times a certain domain address being tried to be resolved, right? And in that scenario, we know that probably that IP addresses that is trying to resolve that domain name that is probably attached to a C2 in a malware, a C2 address in a malware, is already infected or being targeted. So that this is a really important piece of information that can be utilized to filter out or prioritize the threats that you try to be involved with. Right? And again, on the label side too, we give a lot more enrichments, right? And these are the labels that are attached to an indicator object. And in there, you can see the MITRE ATT&CK IDs, the human readable explanation or description of what behavior this particular indicator is related to. And also the threat name, the threat type. Is it a Trojan or is it an injector? And what malware family it is. Is it a KR banker or some Blyhan stealer or any kind of other thing that we were able to monitor we're going to include that indicator in the indicators that we ship. And most of the indicators, when it comes to confidence, VMRay has been, notoriously well known about trying to double down on not creating false positive, both in the sandbox, in the threat analysis platform, and also in the threat intelligence that we generate. And we're trying to put an extreme care on not being able to tip a false positive in the automated alert enrichment and alert generation scenarios in the SIEMs or EDRs, right? And you can here see that most of the indicators having the highest confidence so that you can be more confident about what comes from this feed and in enabling different use cases like, again, alert generation and maybe even blocking that indicator on the parameter. And this is a high level view of what UniqueSignal provides. And in the VMRay platform, for the people that are used to the user interface of VMRay platform, here we analyzed an executable file. And we were able to successfully classify this as shark stealer. And it is doing a lot of evasion attempts. And here you can see it's trying to sleep, right? And our anti-sleep mechanism was able to detect this. And we were able to skip 11 minutes of time and truncate it into 31 seconds. And we were able to see all of the malicious behavior that this particular sample is trying to achieve, right? In here, we not only have the static rules that are matched on the sample that probably coming with Yara and reputation, but we also have a lot of dynamic behavioral visibility. And this just plays a huge role into what you're, responding to. If you had all of these informations on a piece of hash or a URL, that means you definitely are dealing with something that is really malicious, and you're not leaving your fate to the vendor and trusting them saying it's malicious and not even knowing what the reason is behind. So it is a stealer. It's just trying to exfiltrate data and trying to get a lot of things from the clipboard and input capture. Same thing goes on over there. Some evasion attempts are continuing. It's trying to access physical drive directly, delaying the execution as we mentioned earlier. And it just sends control codes to just driver. And there's not only these behavior, but also a lot of other things around the network on performing a DNS request to a particular domain. And we're able to, get all this visibility under like 4 minutes. And we not only see all of these things, but again, in malware, as you know, some of the malware authors, they embed a configuration into their sample so that they can change those configurations in different campaigns or scenarios, or maybe even attacking different endpoints or organizations, but using the same piece of code. And in there, we were able to extract all the malware configurations from that sample. We know what encryption key it's using, what is the algorithm behind it, what URL it is trying to attach, or connect to get the secondary stages of the same attack, and also some other stuff around the contract functions. And these are all things that is depending on the style of the attack, actually. And it's just going to be a tailor-made for every version of the malware family. We not only see the old sample execution, but again, doubling down on that threat, the MITRE ATT&CK mapping, we are able to see and map it to different technique IDs to do our behavioral rules. We can go ahead and, double down on some of the things over here, but I'm going to skip into the network section to show you like one more sample here. Again, as you know, Shark Stealer is a stealer. It just tries to capture the inputs from the clipboard and just tries to collect a lot of data from the endpoints that it is infecting. But here we also see which countries it is trying to connect to, what is happening in the TCP session, and what is being sent actually in the PCAP stream, and what kind of function logs that this particular behavior was tied to. And as you can see, all of these details are available for you to navigate and try to understand more about the nature of this threat. But of course, without going into that detail, to enable another use case of the CTI teams or SOC teams trying to utilize this data in a different modality, in a different setting, in threat intelligence platforms, or again, SIEMs or EDRs, you need to have this data in a different structure. And in here, UniqueSignal solves this by sending it through multiple different formats, like Sticks 2.1. And in here, you're seeing an example of the same report, but in a different product. We have through this analysis report, we have two particular indicators, and in there, we are able to see all of the behavior that it is attached to and all the different things that we know about this. It's a shark stealer. It's also using some other combinations of hijack loader, and it tries to inject into the memory of another process, which is also a very malicious thing. So when you look at the entities that is attached to, you get a piece of indicator, not only knowing what this is, like with a high confidence, but you also know what type of operation it does. What is the kill chains that it's attached to? And what are the other things that I need to know about this particular indicator? So it's not just saying, hey, this hash is malicious. There's a lot of story behind it. And going to another example in VMRay platform, this time it's the deer stealer. It's again, the stealer again uses another hijack loader. They try to utilize and mix and match of these things. And again, it does injection, does like take screenshots through the API of Windows API, and also does network connection to upload those data that it was stealing. And in this case, it's a large amount of data. And over here, this is the timeline of the processes in that analysis. So it creates by, creating an MSI exec.exe, and then goes on to the final stages where it does a lot of injections to its even child processes to evade some of the detection over there, right? And here we see the MITRE ATT&CK matrix light up like a Christmas tree, where we were able to get a lot of information about the malware family in a couple of minutes. And of course, having all of these data in a different format, again, has a lot of value. And in here, we have a couple of similar reports that are, tied to each other, which again, allows you to have a pivoting capability. But in here, through the relationship object, we tie the indicators that we've observed in that analysis in the VMRay platform and tie it to that report object. And in under the entities section, which could be a different part in different platforms, you can see all the indicators that we think is relevant for this. And here we have the deer stealer indicator, and it does, again, evasion. And having said that, we again have a lot of information around the labels and also clearly stating to you what this particular indicator is relevant to. It's an entry point of injection. It modifies the control flow of a process, start from created or modified executable, right? So these are all of the things that you can look at, analyze, and understand how malicious it is. And in this case, again, it's a really high score. And it's tied to different observable objects and, some malware families in here as well. But again, here, I think we've done a good job on explaining to you how having these different type of data in various different use cases. And instant response, you may be needing much more detail on the host-related artifacts. But in the CTI use cases, maybe having what malware family is, what kind of operation does it do on a high level, and what kind of technique IDs is it related to, and what industry it is targeting, and what kind of geographical context can I expect from this is really, really valuable. And when these feeds are operationalized, it will provide its value by giving you a high confidence and really high and detailed amount of information on a case that is generated by it.